Good afternoon. I'm John Williams, Interim President at Transylvania University, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our new President-Designate, Mr. Brien Lewis. Let me tell you a little bit about his background. He served very capably for the last 8 years as president of Catawba College in Salisbury, North Carolina. He comes from an academic background in that his mother was an English professor and he was raised in the liberal arts tradition and has a great appreciation and understanding of it. He has 2 children in college and therefore as a parent he understands the challenges and opportunities of children attending higher education institutions today, and he understands those necessities firsthand. On a personal note, Laura and Brien enjoy travel. Their favorite destinations are Ireland and New Zealand. Brien shared with me that one of his childhood ambitions was to grow up and be a professional hockey player for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but an injury early on in childhood thwarted that opportunity, and therefore he became a college president. So Brien, welcome to this segment of our virtual Alumni Weekend here at Transylvania. Please.
Oh, thank you for having me. Appreciate you doing this. Wish I could be there in Lexington with you. Wish we could all be in Lexington, but I hope everyone is staying safe and well under the current circumstances.
That's great. Well, I have a few questions that I'd like to ask you, and would invite you to share with our loyal Transylvania alums. First of all, what attracted you to Transy?
Well, a number of things. Oddly enough, I was actually a candidate for this role 10 years ago. Made it to the semifinal rounds then. And that's when I first really learned about Transylvania, its remarkable history, its great focus on preparing young people and doing that in a very personal environment in an area that is very compelling for young people. I think Lexington is a great advantage for Transy because of what it can provide for students in terms of experiential opportunities and just so many different types of industries and cultural events right on the campus's doorstep. And it was really compelling to me what a strong history and what a strong current sense there was of the need to have both excellence and access, that there's a real commitment to ensuring that young people from all backgrounds can enjoy all the value of a Transy education.
Great. So when you let's go back to your first visit on campus, and what struck you? What kind of impression did you leave the campus in the Lexington area when you first visited?
Well, my first visit was 10 years ago and got there right around dusk, and the place was pretty quiet, but it was just a magical setting. The grandeur of Old Morrison, the view down the steps through Grants Park to downtown, and just walking around the campus, even at dusk. This will sound a little strange, but it really felt like home because I grew up in downtown Toronto, literally just a few blocks from the University of Toronto, which is a huge institution, but it's sort of integrated in the same way right into downtown and residential area of Toronto. So that kind of campus environment felt very much at home. And as my wife Laura and I were just ambling around the campus, we encountered one of the public safety officers who was incredibly friendly and gracious and showed us where Raph's tomb was and everything. So we felt that we were made at home and welcomed literally from the very first moments on campus.
Some of that great Kentucky hospitality. That's wonderful. So as we think about higher education, it's certainly something that both of us are well versed in. What are some of the issues that Transylvania is going to face in general as we look at higher education today?
Well, 6 weeks ago, I probably would have given you a slightly different answer, or it would have been what would now be an incomplete answer. But I think a lot of it still holds true that there are a number of significant headwinds facing higher education in general, and small institutions in particular. Uh, I think there's there's a bit of a disconnect, if you will, between what you sometimes hear in the public sphere about what's needed to prepare students for careers and particular jobs. But what I've been hearing at a similar size and type institution for the last 8 years from employers is that they are really looking for people with that liberal arts background. And that in many cases, not every case, but in many cases, the major is really quite secondary to them. What they're looking for are people with strong critical thinking skills, strong communication capabilities, people who have the ability to work effectively in teams to identify and solve problems. And whether you do that as an English major or a biology major or an accounting major, in many instances, is quite secondary. Because those employers know, and I think many of us recognize, that we need to be preparing young people not just for that first job or that first career, but those opportunities that they're going to be engaging in 20 or 30 years from now that literally don't exist today. And that there is no better preparation for that than a broad and deep liberal arts background that will prepare people for what Daniel Pink has come to call the conceptual age, where you have to have a set of skills that can't be outsourced or automated or replaced with artificial intelligence. And that really comes down to creativity, critical thinking, and a really deep understanding of human beings and being able to understand and interact with a wide range of people, because that's what the landscape involves now. So there were all those headwinds 6 weeks ago, but since the pandemic has visited us, I think there's a new set of challenges. Transy, I think, has stepped up magnificently to those challenges with your leadership to transition to remote learning and remote working in a very short period of time. Catawba College has done a very similar process, and I've been so impressed with the faculty and staff at both institutions who have adapted quickly to in some cases, technologies and platforms they weren't used to working with, and same for students. My two children that you referenced are going through the same process. They are taking all their classes online. And what really struck me in talking with them about their experience is that they couldn't fathom how they could go through this transition if they were at a large institution and in large classes where they didn't know their faculty. But here, even if they encounter, whether it's a technical problem or an issue understanding a topic in class, they feel that they can really connect with their faculty and that the faculty will be responsive. Very different than if they were in a 400-seat lecture hall and the professor didn't know them by name. So I think that's a real advantage that people will come to realize because of the pandemic that a place like Transylvania has to offer. So what can we learn from this? I think it underscores the value of not just the type of education Transy offers, but how it offers it, but that we're going to have to be more nimble in using online and other delivery methods to meet people where they are, because circumstances continue to change.
Right. Well, you referenced the coronavirus pandemic, which has certainly been a devastating situation throughout the world. Specifically, as you think about Catawba, and certainly thinking about Transylvania, what impacts do you see that having directly on our? And we've certainly talked a bit about this before, but certainly share with the group here what's on your mind as we move forward.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of unknowns here. There is no playbook to reference here. There's no statistical model that can say, well, the last time we had a massive pandemic, because there hasn't been one in anybody's living memory. So to some degree, we're all making this up as we go along, using our best judgment and the best information we can get from science and other data. What I think it's going to lead to is possibly an emphasis on people staying closer to home for education. Perhaps a real benefit to Transylvania is that such a high percentage of our students do come from Kentucky and the immediate region. I think it would be much more uncomfortable for parents to be sending their children, or for children to be leaving home to go hundreds of miles away or a couple of time zones away. So that local connection may be a great advantage for us, and one that we need to embrace and support. Again, I think technology and what we're learning from it, whether we start offering more things exclusively in an online format, or whether faculty have simply had an opportunity to really see that there are other tools that they can use in their teaching toolbox to engage with students and convey information. Maybe they just will now have a wider variety of options, and so I can really do this portion of my course more effectively using this online portion, and then use the class time to engage students in a different way, and really have a deeper, richer course and learning experience as a result.
Well, good, good. So let's turn our attention to the alumni. I mean, that's the purpose of our virtual Alumni Weekend this year because of the pandemic. And as you approach this new opportunity here in Lexington at Transylvania, what do you think Transy can do to better support our alumni?
Well, I need obviously to learn a lot more about what kinds of services and support is already in place. But I have to imagine that the Transy Alumni Network is such an interesting one that there would be more ways, whether it's through virtual opportunities or face-to-face things, to expand those networks, to connect people who might not have been classmates, but maybe have similar affinities and been able to engage alumni from different generations. I can just point to my own experience as an alum of UNC Chapel Hill. I've found that the people that I've connected with post-graduation are a very different group than those that I was in school with. And yet those relationships have turned out to be most enjoyable and engaging as well. I think there's lots of ways that Transy can help alumni as they look to explore new opportunities or new ventures, to say, who else out there who shares the same passion and experience at Transy could be a resource for me, or I could be a helping hand for them as we look to really expand their opportunities to engage with our students and hire our students for their enterprises. I think would be tremendously beneficial and obviously a win-win.
Great. So let's go the other way. So as you think about the alumni, what can the alumni do to support Transylvania?
I know many alumni are already very generous with their time and their dollars, and we're going to continue to need both of those. In terms of time, I think one of the most valuable things that Transy alumni can do is to literally help us find that next generation of students, whether it's folks in their family or their neighborhoods, or just wherever they connect with people. Telling the Transy story, representing what Transy has to offer, and making the case for Transy, helping people understand, okay, if you're concerned about the sticker price, look past that. Talk to folks in the financial aid and admissions office. Transy might be much more affordable and accessible than you might think at first blush. I think being those effective and authentic tellers of the Transy story is essential, because people really rely on that authentic personal experience. You're less likely to go to a movie or buy a book from an advertisement than you are if a friend says, oh, I read this or I saw this and I loved it and I think you would too. in the same way, I think having alumni telling the Transy story would be hugely beneficial. And then just being available to be resources, whether it's as a mentor or to bring an intern on board, all those kinds of ways are essential. And then financial support. As we all know, higher education is not an inexpensive endeavor, and everybody was benefited at some stage by some help that they got, financial or otherwise, for their Transy experience, and to be able to pay it forward and make that opportunity available is a very rewarding and fulfilling thing. And I would hope all alumni would be willing to support that.
That's wonderful. Well, Brien, thank you very much for your time today, and it's been a real pleasure to have this opportunity. Although I'd rather be entertaining you and Laura here in person in Lexington on the Transylvania campus, as to introduce you to so many of our wonderful supportive alumni that you referenced. So as we wrap up here, you related to me that you had an interest in community theater. So making Brien a bit more tangible. Tell us about that activity as we wind down today.
Well, I got involved in theater at a pretty young age, and kept it up a little bit in college, and then it's one of those itches that I just had to scratch occasionally. And there's wonderful community theater here in Salisbury, so I got involved in a pretty wide variety of shows, some heavy dramas like the John Grisham courtroom thriller, A Time to Kill, but also fun, silly things like Mel Brooks's The Producers, and a show called Peter and the Starcatcher, where I played a mermaid with a Scottish accent. So yeah, as a friend of mine said, once I've seen you doing that, it's kind of hard to unsee that. But it's a great deal of fun and a wonderful way to get to know members of the community that I otherwise wouldn't get a chance to engage with. So I've truly enjoyed that, and who knows, maybe there'll be an opportunity in Lexington to get involved as well.
Well, I certainly think that will be. Let me thank you again for spending some time with us today. And it's been a real honor and privilege for me to get to know you as a colleague, and certainly wish you very, very well as you assume your respective role as the 27th president of Transylvania University in July.
Well, thank you, John. I've really appreciated your friendship, your mentorship, and the great leadership you've provided to Transylvania during challenging times. Your steady hand has meant a lot, I know, to the entire Transylvania community. And so even as an incoming person, I see it and I feel it. And I'm sure that there are a lot of very grateful folks out there who would express that to you if they got the chance.
Thank you.